welcome to Mixed Media Live. We're excited for today's episode, which we're going to be interacting with the interwebs, with the Reddit community primarily, but also with YouTube comments, articles, etc. Let us know if you like episodes like this, where we go over what's going on in the sphere of the internet. If you enjoy this kind of format where we're reacting live and we're giving our responses to your hot takes, just let us know in the chat, let us know in the comments, and we'll keep doing these. So without further ado, why don't we introduce ourselves? Ben?
Hi, I'm Ben Costello. I'm a flutist and a media composer.
Hey, I'm Nathan. I'm a game developer and 3D modeler.
And my name is Irving. I'm a media entrepreneur and filmmaker, and we are Mixed Media. And what we do is every week, this time, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we get on live and we make a podcast. But the cool thing about us being live is that you can be part of the podcast. So I see there are a few people watching right now. If you want, you can chat with us at any given point. Nathan will be monitoring the chat, and you can add your own hot takes. You can comment on the hot takes, and Nathan will be sure to inject your voice into the stream. To the right of the screen, there is a little board there, a little whiteboard. And I had this neat idea recently that for those who want to join our locals community, that's mixedmedia.locals.com, and you can join there for free. We may give you access to this whiteboard if you prove to be a responsible human being, at least for the first few people, so that you can doodle and draw during the stream. In fact, if you comment and chat during the stream at any given point, maybe Nathan will drop you a link. We'll see. But yeah, how are you guys doing? How are your weeks, and what's been going on?
I have finals. It's been rough. So this week and next week is a lot of finals stuff.
How about you, Ben?
I've been okay. I got the second COVID vaccine on Wednesday, so I didn't feel so great Wednesday and Thursday, but doing much better today.
Good, yeah. And my week has been fairly typical. I'm currently doing post-production for a web series, and I'm doing the entire process on my own, so it's a little grueling, especially with indie productions. Things aren't always organized the best way, but hey, I'm doing filmmaking, which is always a plus. So yeah, should we just jump into it? I think the format of this is generally going to be, I'm just going to literally go... What we did was each of us randomly went around and found some interesting, trendy hot takes out there, mostly on Reddit, like I said, and we found them for each other. So we haven't seen the comments that are about our particular field. So I have not seen any of the filmmaking comments that they pulled up for me, and they have not seen the stuff that I pulled up for them. So the way I'll do this is I'll rotate through what we've picked for each other, or through each of us, and I'll just pick randomly. And whatever we get to and however long we want to spend on this is what we get to. But like I said, if you're there in the chat right now, you can add your own comment and get feedback from us, see how we react to your comments. So who wants to go first from their pool?
First to like use our quote, I guess, or whatever it is. It doesn't really matter to me. But I think it's worth noting that mine are like a mix between like just like random memes, like it's kind of just funny, and also like serious things. So yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah. Here, actually, I'm gonna start with Ben's actually, because it's the one that Ben had picked out, because it's his are nicely formatted, and I'm not sure if they'll show up properly for the rest of us. So let's see, what do we got here? Let's see. So it says Christopher Nolan's The Prestige outlines the three parts of a trick: the prestige, the turn, and the prestige. In The Pledge, the magicians show the audience something ordinary. In The Turn, the magician takes the ordinary something and makes it extraordinary. The third part, the prestige, is the climax of the trick. It's the part that astonishes the audience. His films all follow the same structure. Nolan is amazing at Pledge, is even better at The Turn, and absolutely awful at The Prestige. his hacky, dumb, confusing third acts ruin his movies. So that's the hot take. Do you want me to read the comments too, or was that the thrust of it?
No, that was what I was going for.
Okay. Well, let's see. I guess this one is for me. And what do I think about this opinion here? So, I mean, I think this is a pretty large generalization because I do see, especially in Christopher Nolan's more recent films, why you would think his third acts are generally weak. I think he does use three-act structure pretty much across the board. He's a very blockbustery kind of director, and so in that respect, I actually respect that he takes so much risks in the sort of genre that he occupies. But it really depends. So if I think about Tenet, I 100% agree that the essential prestige of the movie, which I won't ruin for people who haven't seen it, it doesn't really hit or land in the way that it should. And more interestingly, I don't think that's because of the story structure. I think that's because of the way that he fitted the structure to the particular story that he wanted to tell. It wasn't very optimal. Yeah, but in Inception, I gotta disagree. The Prestige is beautiful. So, and the thing is, I actually do agree that this is actually how he structures his stuff by the Prestige format. I actually agree. I've noticed that as well. That he sort of carries that from film to film. The only one I can think of that doesn't do that is Insomnia, which is a film that is his only film that doesn't play with time. And the most, I guess, normal film that he has, although I think it's actually a pretty good film. So, yeah.
What about Batman? Doesn't play with time, does it?
Batman? Oh, yeah, so none of the Batman films play with time. That's also true. There is no... it doesn't follow this formula either. Not really. And you could maybe make an argument that the trilogy before Heath Ledger died might have, as a whole, might have tried to follow that sort of format, but I'm not actually sure. Because I could see you doing the whole trilogy in that format. Would be interesting, definitely.
When you read it, I was thinking in my mind about the movies and seeing if I could recognize the three-act structure that was going on. I did. And I was thinking, okay, are the Prestiges bad? And I came to the same conclusion. I was like, I like the Interstellar Prestige, but I get why a lot of people don't like it. That ruins the movie for a lot of people. And for Inception, I was like, wait a minute, that's definitely that's a good Prestige. That's definitely a great ending to a movie. Yeah, that's what I thought. Fun hearing it.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think it's probably an overgeneralization. I will say that I think this is the only thing about Christopher Nolan that I pulled up. That was probably if you're going through Reddit and like hot takes on film, most similar about Christopher Nolan and about how bad Tenet is, which I'm not sure if that's really a hot take. So I didn't include any of those, so we got all your thoughts on Tenet a few weeks ago.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't blame people for not liking Tenet. It probably it's like very polarized, and I kind of fall somewhere on the negative side, but more towards the center on it. I think it's at least fun and interesting. Oh, this one's from me. Okay, so instead of reading this one, because I actually remember what this one is about, this one comes from Reddit, I'll just tell you what the author's general point was. So basically, gambling in games is a huge controversy in general, especially games marketed towards younger audiences. So you have like loot boxes, loot crates, the eternal debate about what is gambling, what's not gambling, and all that stuff. This person is basically saying that games should be forced to visualize the odds properly. So basically, in a lot of games, they'll like have like maybe a wheel or something, and the wheel will be split up into a pie, and the wheel will spin when you open the loot crate. And the wheel won't... and oftentimes you pay for these loot crates, although not always, but I think that's where the controversy comes when you do pay for them. Sometimes all slices of the pie look equal, even though the odds of getting any particular thing are not equal. And so the person's point is that it's potentially wrongfully deceptive to not represent the actual odds on that pie, like have that small sliver for the thing they actually want. So what do you think, Nathan?
Is the point that would numbers be good enough? I'm just trying to understand the person's point. Would numbers be good enough? Like just percentages? Would that satisfy whatever they're looking for?
They say visualize.
That's what I was like. Are numbers visual enough? Like, or do you actually mean like the pie thing? Um, I guess I'll answer it for both because I might as well, right? So if we're allowing numbers, this is not an unpopular opinion at all. It's just normal. In fact, I believe it's illegal in Korea to have to not have the numbers. There was I forget what game got sued by the Korean government for they had a number. Oh, this is a bit different actually. Yeah. I think they got sued because there was something that they said was attainable in the game, but the chance was so low that the Korean government deemed it unattainable essentially, and then that wasn't allowed. It's not really an unpopular opinion though. Even in like a pie chart thing, like I don't really think anyone would be like, "Wow, that's horrifying."
But do you think it should be forced, like legally speaking? Let's say it's a legal requirement. Do you think it should be a legal requirement?
I think if you're an adult and you have the numbers, you shouldn't need a pie chart to tell you that that's a small number, or it's a big number. Of course, you can fit like normally you can't gamble if you're under a certain age. You can't enter a casino like that, right? But it's weird because games don't have that restriction oftentimes. Like you can, load up some game that has some gambling feature in it. And in that case, then maybe that makes more sense. Maybe you can make a case for that. I'm not too sure because I feel like there's I have no concrete reason for either way, other than, you don't want kids to get scammed. But at the end of the day, they also need like a parent's credit card, right? Or something. So I feel like percentages are probably just good enough if you are able to see the percentages, just like at a casino, just like you could, have your parents go in the casino for you and do whatever, as long as it's up to them, the adults, and as long as they know the information, then I think it's fine.
What are your thoughts, Ben? Do you have any thoughts?
I mean, the more people tend to be visual, so I don't know. I don't feel like would be a problem to like make it even more visual than an actual pie chart. I mean, also people aren't good with numbers.
Yeah, to me, like if I was marketing this game towards like a younger audience in particular, I'd feel like I would feel kind of slimy, not fully visualizing. If it's like free loot crates, I don't think I care because they're free anyway. So it's like, I mean, in theory, you grinded to get the loot crate, and that's not money. That's just in-game work per se. So yeah, it's an interesting topic. I'm not sure how I feel about making it a law or not. I would have to think deeper about it.
So this is for you, Irving. This is from a website called debate.org, which just hosts people can propose a topic and then they debate with someone else and vote when the debating period's over, and then you see who wins. So this one was kind of like a half meme one. The topic is live action movies are easier than stop motion. So the guy who was pro this idea was the one who started it, and his opening statement is live action movies are easier than stop motion, even though it does take a while to make a live action movie. Stop motion takes longer. When you're making a stop motion movie, you have to take a lot of pictures for 1 second of the movie. For live action, you simply make videos. And then the reply is odd. It's you gotta have lots of stuntsmen for your live action movies. Those stunts are not easy. This is harder compared to some figures, props, and some stands and a green screen. And then the person responds, live action just means the movie has real people in it, doesn't need stunts. Stop motion is like animation. 1 second in the movie takes lots of pictures. For live action movies, you can take videos and put them together. And then there was nothing after that because the guy who was Khan forfeited to that argument. So that was interesting.
I think that's really funny that people bother to argue about that on debate.org, period. That's a really random thing to argue about. I don't know that it's that complicated other than, like, I mean, they have their different problems. So, like, I think they both failed to address, like, producer's side of live action, which is, like, immensely complicated because you have to manage people, and managing people, well, you have to manage people for stop motion, of course, as well, but it's a little bit different. You can separate things a lot easier away from each other. So if you're doing voiceovers, you can do that voiceover work later, and so the organizational aspect becomes a little bit easier. Whereas actors are, you know, they need to be on set, and if you're working with high profile actors, you got to manage their schedules, you got to manage their egos, you got to manage the rest of the crew's schedules, you got to manage the equipment schedules, and that's just scheduling. That has nothing to do with money. Then you factor in money. And then, okay, stop motion shares that aspect of it, of course. But I think it's interesting because I'm not actually sure what is, on average, easier. If it's Tenet, then Tenet's going to be harder, probably, than the average stop motion film, I would guess. If it's, you know, an indie $1 million budget film where it's mostly characters moving around life, that might actually be easier than a stop motion film because of the, like the person said, the modeling and the intense care you have to take for moving the action, the little characters around from frame to frame. So yeah, in short, I don't know. What do you guys think?
I mean, obviously I've never, you know, worked with stop motion, but I imagine that that's probably what you said is probably true. Probably depends on the kind of film. If it's very, like, character driven and not very action based, probably somewhat easier, at least on the production side, to do the live action.
Yeah, I think it's movie per movie, but I would assume that in general live action would be harder because you're required to do things without, like, you know, precise planning. And not that every movie includes a stunt, but that's a good example of something that is something that, you know, and stop motion's potentially a lot easier because it's just frame by frame. You just position the, you know, whatever, but you have to deal with real physics in this scenario. So that's a problem, but not just for stunts. I mean, like, just things that are based on time is a problem.
Do the next one. Let's see. So next one's from Ben again.
This is a really long one.
Oh, interesting. What is it?
So this is from a thread discussing whether we are in the golden age of film accessibility because of streaming services. And this person makes several points. It's actually a really interesting thread. People have very different and interesting opinions, but I pulled this one out, although it's a little bit long.
This person says, I disagree. I think streaming damages modern content quality, and the accessibility of older films is an illusion. The content damage to contemporary movies comes from the demand for time over quality. A 10-hour show that 1,000 people will always take priority over a 2-hour movie 1,000 people will watch. This damages content because instead of concise intentional statements, content now is produced with the intention of elongation or continuation, etc. It's a bit of a vicious cycle as well, because the more people consume this type of content, the more they expect it and are turned off by the concise statements with a concrete ending. In terms of accessibility, I also believe that this is an illusion. You can find something to watch with less effort for sure, but I actually believe specific content was more accessible in the video store days or even the rampant piracy days. For instance, I pay for 5 streaming services and have access to thousands of movies, but collectively only have access to about 4 Sidney Lumet movies. There's nowhere to go to physically to find these movies, and piracy is much more contained and riskier than it used to be. 15 years ago, I would have gone to Family Video and found at least his critical hits, and they could have told me which locations would have others. With the exception of Criterion, most services seem to have their token cinephile section that are usually underpopulated. You get 1 or 2 classic Hollywoods, 3 or 4 foreign cult classics, and a couple best pictures. Oh, big opinion. And one that I have a lot of opinions about, so I'm going to try to like curtail it as much as I can. This is something that is definitely scary for someone like me too, who loves features more than anything. It's interesting because there are a lot of things going on here. So I'll put this in this context because I feel like I'm in a position to say I told you so, because I feel like not that many streams ago I was saying how Netflix was going to eventually suffer for what they were doing to their content with their content strategy and shifting over to an algorithmic pushing from content to content strategy, which is essentially like the Facebook, Twitter, social media strategy, except they don't even have a social media component to their platform, so it doesn't even make sense. And so I feel like I can say I told you so because Netflix just recently reported their user numbers, and it plummeted, absolutely plummeted. And this was bound to happen.
The coronavirus thing?
Yeah, still now. Yeah.
Also, I'd like to point out that this content elongation, I think I was talking about that in another stream, right? About I don't remember how this came up, but about games just being long for the sake of being long.
Oh yeah, it's not a good strategy. You don't. These are really bad ways of using data to inform your decisions. I'm a fan of using data. It's not a binary thing. Data is informative in some ways, but you also have to have a heart for people instead of for dragging them from content to content. And recently too, right, maybe a few weeks after Netflix on earnings day posted their terrible numbers, their stock actually plummeted the next day by 13%. Just think about that. It's part of the FANG stock group.
Do you know what percent the user base was down?
I don't remember. I'm not going to remember off the top of my head. But it was something bad. I remember being like, oh, I didn't think it would happen all at once like that. But, they have competition, right? They have competition in other streaming platforms, and people have to make a decision on which platform is actually going to be the most useful for their time at some point, especially in this time where we're being economically squeezed. A lot of people are feeling economically squeezed. So, could have predicted this. That's kind of good news, except the thing is the other monopolies in the space, they didn't learn the lesson just looking at Netflix. They haven't learned the lesson. And so the question is, as content distribution platforms keep getting hit because they're not providing people with true value, or people are just subscribed for one show, and sometimes that's hard to justify economically for some people, what's next? And my answer is at this rate, it'll just be the death of the actual art form itself, which for TV is a lot farther off in the distance, but for cinema, for films, is a lot scarier of a prospect because of the just general atmosphere around theater consumption, the theater chains just being absolutely dunces as well, also being gigantic monopolies that I kind of wished died during the Rona, except for what it would have done to the art form as a whole. That's the only reason I rooted for them. But if it weren't for that, I would have been like, I don't care. Go under. Let's see what the next person has to offer. Picking up your pieces. So in terms of availability and golden age and what that means, this should, in my opinion, be the golden age of all video across the board, whether you're making content for YouTube, whether you're making content for Twitch or any other live platform. If it's in a video format, which includes cinema, this is the era. And I think this era will end at some point in the future. But for the foreseeable medium term, this is the era for video. And the problem is that the monopolization of streaming and video is sort of putting a huge damper on that golden era, which is unfortunate because we could have seen an extreme explosion. I mean, we have people being able to make excellent films potentially if they just, could distribute and could do things the right way for like a few $100,000, make it, incredible films because of the way that the economics of filmmaking has continually become cheaper and cheaper. And that's a great thing because then we get the best and best voices, in theory, rising to the top. Unfortunately, that is not what's happening. So a bit of it should be, but it's not, I think, is the answer. Oh, I was on Instagram. This is what I want to say. I was on Instagram recently, and I accidentally happened upon a trendy subject. I was doing a bit of market research, and I happened upon a trendy subject, which is a bunch of people complaining about how there's nothing to watch on streaming services. These are like 18 to 24-year-olds who are on Instagram just complaining. Some of them are saying, I wonder what it was like when Blockbuster was around. Just think about that real quick. Just think about it. That's a bad situation to be in. These include shows, guys. So, we got to get our heads back together and fix this because this is out of hand.
In a lot of ways, I agree. I mean, granted, my Blockbuster days were limited to, looking at the Scooby-Doo section, basically. And, what's the cool Scooby-Doo film that I haven't seen yet? And my parents would get it. But, I mean, I'm not terribly impressed with all these streaming services. Yes, there's a billion things, but it seems like there's less things. Even if there are things that I want to watch, they're so buried, I would never know that they exist.
Couldn't agree more. I really want to get rid of my Netflix subscription. I have to finish Breaking Bad with my wife, but once we're done with Breaking Bad, it's over for Netflix. Goodbye. I'll be streaming free at that point, and I will not look back or regret it because every streaming platform I've ever experienced, Netflix was the most promising. Great video quality compared to the rest of them. I think leaps and bounds better. I mean, what I experienced on Hulu recently really just disturbed me in terms of how bad a film could look on streaming. And I was like, I complained about Netflix. I watched Mank on Netflix. That also looked terrible because it's a very dark film, and any dark film on Netflix looks like trash. Like, if there are blacks in the film, you can expect to see blocks like Minecraft floating around the screen.
It'd be interesting if it had different compression algorithms for various different shows and movies to cater towards its style.
But you see, that's the thing. That's what Netflix could have done. That's what a tech company could have brought to the table, is they could have continued to develop their algorithms on the actual content itself. And they could have brought a culture of, let's say, home theater construction, or something like that. Or there's so many ways they could have gone, but they chose to go away from thinking about the mediums that they're distributing, and started thinking about, how do I get my monthly subscriber count this next quarter to go up so I can get more investors? Not a long-term strategy, and we just saw that. So, I told you so, Netflix. That's all I have to say. Hey, I don't think that was too long, so let's go to the next one.
Yeah, that's definitely the longest one in there that I put in. It's just, I thought it had a lot of really interesting points. So,
hey guys, who are in the stream, what do you guys think about streaming platforms? I would like to see your comments. So this one says, Tencent. Oh, this is from me. So this is from me to Nathan. It says, Tencent Holdings is negotiating with U.S. National Panel to keep stakes of Epic and Riot. So for people who don't know, Tencent is a Chinese game developer. They don't really develop that much. They don't
develop games. No.
They just acquire things.
They're a holdings company. They just own game companies.
Yeah. And so they own stakes in Epic and Riot, which are some of the biggest game developers and studios and publishers in the entire world. And they are currently under fire by U.S. antitrust stuff for their holdings. And so I think there was a comment that I wanted to read too. Yeah, so someone says, just say no is the top comment, which I thought was hilarious. The next person says, so they might be breaking up a part of a possible monopoly. That's cool. Could they do that for a few other monopolies? Cough, Disney, cough. And I loved that. So, yeah, what do you think, Nathan? Yeah.
I actually didn't know this was happening. Tencent seems like, to be clear, I do not like the company at all. But I would not classify them as a monopoly. I don't actually know what's like why. What does, because Riot and Epic Games do different things mostly, right? Epic Games is Epic Games is, I guess, mostly known for Fortnite, but the more important contribution they have to the gaming scene is Unreal Engine. Riot doesn't do anything with engines. They make League of Legends, they make Valorant. I'm not really sure where the monopoly is. Like, what is it that they're accused of having too much power in? What industry? What subset of the industry? I do know they also own a lot of other things. I think they own. Do they own the developers of the mobile Call of Duty game? They might. They own like developers of many mobile games, many popular mobile games. Yeah, I don't have any opinion on this because I actually just don't understand why why there would be antitrust things going on here.
Well, you see, the thing is
with Epic and Riot, that confuses me.
Not traditionally, it sounds like it's less legal than it is. Like, the precedent antitrust used to be a lot stronger than it is interpreted for the current American oligarchs like Disney, for example. Used to be a lot harder for you to acquire and expand at those sizes. You can come up with whatever reasons you want for why that has gone away, but I have negative feelings towards that. But they're applying, I think they're applying more of the more stringent principles to antitrust to Tencent. So if you're comparing it to Disney, of course it doesn't make sense. But if you're comparing it to what it should be, it probably does make sense because you're controlling the production, the tools of production, you're controlling the production, and you're controlling the publication. And not only all of those things, but you're controlling many other developers or many other producers as well, to the point where it looks like you might be starting to corner the market, I guess would be the concern. I don't know if I agree with that or not because I just don't know enough about it. But yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, so if a percent stake in, for example, if the concern is the fact that the means of production, you should, 99% of the time you're using an engine, building from scratch or building from a smaller framework is uncommon. Specifically, building from scratch is like, no one does that really. Happens, but not common. So if the concern is the means of production being Unreal Engine owned by Epic Games, Unreal Engine I don't think they quite have 50%, even 50% of the, actually, no, they don't have 50% of the games that come out on Unreal Engine. Unity is still more popular than Unreal Engine. It's a massive competitor. There is still like proprietary engines like Frostbite. There is CryEngine. There's Godot. There's a billion other different things. Plus the occasional games that come out using lower level frameworks, and some that are just straight up use like OpenGL or something like that and don't use much else to help them. So yeah, I still find that odd with that definition. And as far as I'm aware, Riot Games does not use Unreal Engine. Maybe they do. I could be wrong, but I always assumed it's some in-house thing. So yeah, I don't know. It's still quite weird to me. And if that is the concern, why isn't Epic? If the concern is the engine alone, well, Riot Games has nothing to do with that. So why isn't Epic Games itself the problem? If it looks like they are cornering the market, why isn't it Epic Games' problem? Because they also make games too, so they would be the whole assembly line essentially is under their control.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm just not educated enough to have a.
I got to look into this because I'm very curious as to why this is happening. I mean, it'd be pretty nice because I don't really like Tencent. So if there's a reason, then okay, I'll take it.
Antitrust law is very complicated. I mean, just this past week, I saw the the EU is pursuing a antitrust case against Apple pursuant to Spotify suing it over Apple Music being a monopoly, which is I think is hilarious. Spotify suing Apple Music for Apple Music, but that's probably a whole nother discussion. How Spotify isn't under fire itself. I don't know. So
Yeah.
it's a strange thing. Obviously, it works differently in different countries. Although I wish we could get rid of, like in the U.S., I wish we could get rid of all of these massive music streaming companies, and have like one that actually pays artists.
Yeah, agreed. Next from Nathan. So it says, here's something I probably shouldn't be saying. I never listen to my soundtrack albums because I can't stand it. It's just stereo. When I write in surround. My life is in surround. That's Hans Zimmer. It's a Hans Zimmer quote, Nathan.
Yeah, I found it. I looked up because I know Ben's not a fan of Hans Zimmer, right? So I know he has a lot of Hans Zimmer has a lot of spicy things to say. I looked up Hans Zimmer quotes or something like that, and I just looked through them. A lot of them were just mild and whatever, a lot of motivational stuff. You can do it kind of stuff, whatever, or things that are just not hot takes. And I found that I was like, huh?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Zimmer has lots of great things to say that you could take and tear apart, or some. It also says a lot of great things. I mean, I see his interactions with a lot of people in the film composer Facebook world, and he's a really supportive guy, even though some of his public comments tend to rub me the wrong way. So for this quote, gosh. I think there are two things. Part of it is I want to take this in light of him saying, I know he said probably in 100 different places that you should never listen to film music. He says basically that the only pieces of music you should study are, I believe, Mahler's Second Symphony and Berlioz's Symphonie Fantastique. I'm pretty sure those are the only two pieces he says you should ever listen to and study. But he's very clear that you should not listen to film music, which I think is hilarious. I know we've discussed. I talked about that at one point. Why that's a really silly idea. Even if you're not gonna get compositional techniques from film music, which I can see what he means by that. There's a lot to learn from film music, just in terms of how do you approach a problem that is specifically filmic, right? You don't have to deal with that when you're writing a symphony for yourself. So I want to take it in that direction a little bit when he says, I don't listen to my soundtrack album. Well, of course he doesn't, because he doesn't listen to any film music. So I guarantee you he doesn't listen to his own stuff, because that's not Symphonie Fantastique or Mahler's Second Symphony. From the general, I think it was his general point, though, is that these soundtrack albums tend not to be mixed in surround sound. Which that's certainly true, and there's no way you're gonna get that from your streaming services. And if he's really writing from the perspective that everything needs to be surround sound, which he probably is more than any other composer, because he really is thinking about the spatial dimensions of his sound. I want the horns on the second floor balcony facing the left, and he does that kind of stuff, and it's cool. But he's probably right. Unless you're watching it in a surround sound environment in a theater, you probably don't get the effect that he was going for if you just listen to the soundtrack album. And if that's how he's writing, and I imagine just from my understanding of how he writes that is how he writes, then yeah, I'd agree. It probably would be really underwhelming from his point of view, knowing what it's supposed to sound like. And I'm sure I find it underwhelming too if I really sat down and listened to his soundtracks compared to listening to them in context in a film in a surround sound environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like the phrasing of the The quote is just really funny to me for some reason.
Yeah, and you can kind of imagine
Definitely.
in his like German accent, right? Like his voice saying that my life is in surround. It's just funny.
Yeah, it's a little dramatic, I think. But
I think probably intentionally, but I'm with him on this one.
hey, that's a new one. That's a first on mixed media. Ben agrees with Mr. Zimmer. Cool. So this is from Ben.
Oh yes, yeah. This is about So the context to this is discussing the new Nintendo game. The name I can't think of a name, but it's basically like a game creator game where like you go through different lessons and it teaches you how to like make video games. I think it was just announced this week. I'm not sure if you know anything about that, Nathan.
I do not follow Nintendo. I find them
Okay.
a bit uninteresting, which is,
So
I guess, not something I'm supposed to say, but yeah.
okay.
That's a
Yeah.
hot take.
So I guess there's a lot of discussions surrounding this in comparison to I think also a game called Dream. It's also supposed to teach you how to create
Yeah, I know
video
that.
games. But I was going specifically for this the top quote where people were discussing whether this like came out of left field, sort of like no one saw this like big expansive and detailed like how to create video games and then you can share them with your friends via sharing code game being announced. And so they're discussing whether Nintendo ever has some sort of natural evolution within their like properties or just in general in terms of like what they put out. So the general quote being, I mean, natural evolution isn't something you can count on from Nintendo either.
So they're criticizing Nintendo on like
Yeah,
the,
saying
I
that,
guess, uniqueness of this or whatever.
yeah, that. So I guess that Nintendo never has a natural progression like within their intellectual properties and also just in general.
I feel like they do often have just a normal progression. I think it's part of the reason why I find them not very interesting. That being said, they do have a lot. They do. What I do respect is that they do experiment a lot with their stuff. I think it just depends on what thing. Like in terms of their consoles, it's usually just like some like it's some experimentation, something that hasn't been done before. In terms of like their IPs, I feel like it's usually something that progresses normally, like Mario, for example. The next Mario kind of just it's nothing. It's never anything like how the heck did they come up with that? You know, it's like this makes sense as the next step. Yeah, I think it depends. I think outside the games, then yeah, that makes sense. That they're pretty sporadic in what they do. They like to experiment and do just kind of random things, which I can respect.
This one's from Reddit. It says, so the original post was about someone saying that it should be okay. This was an r/unpopular opinions. And the original post said that it's okay to like Mozart and people are just Mozart haters. This person responds with, the people who usually scorn at a statement like this are usually in a stage of musical education where they are drawn to a richness and complexity which they find in other periods but cannot find in Mozart. Thus, the opinion dissolves into him being repetitive/boring, and anyone whose favorite composer is Mozart quote-unquote, uninitiated. In my experience, many people eventually rediscover Mozart, and that opinion vanishes. But this can happen quite late. So, interesting thoughts on classical music. So what do you think, Ben?
Okay, yeah, that's a really interesting opinion. I'll say from my personal experience, for the longest time, I could not stand Mozart. I could listen to like any other composer, and I thought Mozart was incredibly boring. He's still, of all the major composers for me, probably the bottom of my list. I have come over time I wouldn't say quite late. I hope I'm still not that old. But with a slight increase in age, to appreciate what he does a little bit more, did I suppose. His music is, I would say it's not terribly interesting to play. I've played the Mozart flute concertos too many times in my life. I think what's interesting about him is that it's kind of the play in between virtuosity and expressiveness, and it's never like his expressiveness is never gonna hit you over the head with emotion. You're not gonna be like drowning in Tchaikovsky pathos or Mahler, like, oh wow, I'm about to die, and what does death mean, and that kind of stuff, and like emotions that seem sort of like they belong in a like in a high school, angsty teen. He's not gonna hit you on the head with that kind of stuff. It's more like, here's something really virtuosic, really fast notes, and here's something that's kind of lyrical, and it's a contrast, and it's like the contrast and the shades of those things that kind of bring out the nuance in his music. I found the appreciating. I'm more able to appreciate the beauty in the contrast with what he does. Generally, though, I don't find that people these days say that Mozart's their favorite composer, except for maybe some pianists. Amongst orchestral musicians, people tend to go with the Romantics. I'm definitely more in line with the Romantics in early 20th century. A lot of these Romantics also rediscovered Mozart for themselves. Some of Tchaikovsky's most interesting music is where he kind of combines his own harmonic style and melodic style with Mozart's, a lot of what Mozart's doing. And yeah, but I think that tends to be some of Tchaikovsky's best stuff, and it's also some of the stuff that kind of style is what I really love about certain films like The Little Mermaid, which really captures that like Tchaikovsky Mozart space really well.
I can kind of see that from the comment. Like, that's why I picked it, because it resonated with me, because I was like, oh, I can see how that progression makes sense, and I can also understand why people would feel that way about Mozart in general. But my thoughts are not as complicated as Ben's, so yeah.
Why do you think that Mozart became one of the most well-known composers if he's not, I guess, seemingly not as noteworthy as other composers?
I would say, yeah, he was important in his own lifetime, and he was prolific in his own lifetime, where, I think part of it is that at that time he's writing, sort of in the zeitgeist, so that's going to make him more accessible. You also couldn't compare him directly to, like, maybe someone like Tchaikovsky is more appealing to the masses in general, at least initially. Maybe that's true. I don't know, but it certainly seems that way. But you couldn't compare Mozart to Tchaikovsky at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. All right. Let's see. So this next one is from Nathan, and it says, unpopular opinion, Fast and Furious is the best movie franchise that's ever been created. No, I'm sorry. But I will say that there are underrated Fast and Furious movies, if you know which ones to watch. There are some really bad ones, though, that you ought to avoid. Tokyo Drift. Like, if someone says, hey, let's put on a fun movie, and they say, let's put on Tokyo Drift, literally tell them they have no idea what fun is, and that they need to go back to the 90s. It's a fun franchise. It's supposed to be fun. I like when they are being very tongue-in-cheek, and that's when it's the best. Was it Fast and Furious 7, which I think often is quoted as one of the best ones. I have not seen all of them, but Fast and Furious 7, I laughed from beginning to end of that movie. It is so funny. It's so ridiculous in all the best ways. It's such a just sheer waste of Hollywood money in all the best ways. But it's like fun in that way. It asks you to enjoy the ridiculous silliness of this universe where cars save the world, and it's I love that. So it really depends on the movie for the general quality. But I mean, there are plenty of better franchises, more consistent franchises. I mean, the Dark Knight trilogy, technically a franchise, and that's like, no, that it's not better than that. I'm sorry. I don't typically watch. Is it better than Marvel? Is an interesting question. I would rather watch the next Fast and Furious movie than watch the next Marvel movie. I'll put it that way. If it was like a random Marvel movie versus Tokyo Drift, I'd probably watch the random Marvel movie. What are you guys' thoughts? Have you guys seen Fast and Furious at all? Or
I have not.
But I just, it's an unpopular opinion, so I assumed, never really hear about Fast and Furious in the Hall of Fame of movies. So I figured it was truly an unpopular opinion. So, yeah. And believe it or not, I got that off of BuzzFeed. Would you believe it? Yeah.
That kind of makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I mean, like, if every movie was like Fast and Furious 7 and just made me laugh from beginning to end, it would definitely be up there especially in terms of comedy franchises, or like, I mean, it's straight up a comedy film. It's unapologetic about it, and I love the heck out of it. So, I mean, you have Dwayne the Rock Johnson, like, driving an ambulance, chasing after someone, like in a muscle car, and actually able to keep up in this ambulance, and then he gets run off the road, off of an overpass, landing head first on the road. He crashes through the windshield. It's just so ridiculous. He crashes through the windshield. He doesn't die. And his shirt is in tatters, exposing his muscular nature.
So it's just highly comical, essentially. Like, yeah, I see that kind of comedy.
I'm sorry, it's freaking hilarious. And his shirt is on fire as he's walking away. It's just so absurd. I'm sorry, but it's. I can't get that image out of my mind. It's so funny. Let's go on to the next one before I die. Has anyone chatted yet, by the way, Nathan?
Mm-hmm.
Except for me?
No.
Hey, if you're shy, we don't bite. We don't get mad at people's opinions. As you can see, we just kind of have fun with it. Oh, so if you
say Life is Strange is a good game, that's just horrifying.
Yeah, you're not allowed to say that. I would concur with that too. Yeah, there is a mobile version of Life is Strange. It's like the game version of a TV, like the cheapest TV soap opera. Like, man, I'm sorry if you're watching and you're offended, but I don't get it. I'm sorry.
Like, there's nothing. It doesn't have any good points going for it. The gameplay is boring, right? So rest in peace that. Rest in peace the fun. And then all you have is story left. And the writing is so bad. So it's like you have nothing to enjoy. It's just a blank slate of garbage. So yeah, that opinion is not allowed. That's illegal around here.
Okay. Let's see. So this one looks like it's for me.
Vertigo doesn't even crack the top 5 of Hitchcock films, and the only reason it tops the Sight and Sound poll is due to the Michael Jordan effect. Critics got bored voting the more deserving and groundbreaking Citizen Kane as greatest film throughout the decades. I found Kane thoroughly entertaining and modern, while it's a battle of the Z's each time I catch Vertigo at a revival showing. In regards to Casablanca, it's like a pop song with a catchy chorus. I wait impatiently each time for the famous lines, like Homer Simpson at a BTO concert.
I love the way people on Reddit phrase things. It's so hilarious. Like a battle of the Z's. That's a funny one. I gotta say, I actually have not seen Vertigo. I know that's blasphemy. I have my experience of generally classic films is pretty terrible, and the reason why you can blame my terrible schedule. You can also blame every time I'm like, hey, I want to watch this classic film with friends in the past. No one wants to watch classic films, so I have not seen Vertigo. I saw Citizen Kane like when my palate was not refined at all. So I actually don't even remember a lot of the film, which is why I didn't really talk about Citizen Kane in the last episode very much, because I just vaguely remember so the more interesting parts. So yeah, I don't have a very good take on this one, other than I can actually I get what the person is getting at because I know enough about the films without having watched them to understand what they're talking about. I find it funny that they call it the Michael Jordan effect. They're talking about the dolly zoom, and a dolly zoom. I don't even know if Vertigo is the first time. It can't be the first time a dolly zoom has ever been used.
That's not what they're referring to by the Michael Jordan effect, right?
That is what they're referring to, because there is a dolly zoom in the same VFX shot as where his. I think that's what they're talking about, right? Where
I think they're saying the Michael Jordan effect is that people are. It says the Michael. It's Vertigo is top. It's the top of this particular poll because of the Michael Jordan effect, which is that critics got bored voting for the more deserving Citizen Kane every year, so they decided to pick something else.
Yeah, I think it's probably like, Michael Jordan just keeps winning awards, and at some point, they're like, all right, let's just give it to some other guy for once.
It's funny how I read that all wrong because of the word effect, and then like Michael Jordan being in Space Jam, and I thought they were making a funny comparison with the dolly zooms. Okay, so I get what they're saying. Okay, so yeah, I get what they're getting at. I don't know if I can formulate an opinion. I just think that the way you're phrasing it is probably not. It's probably not as obvious as that. Is my opinion. But again, I can't fully commit because I have not seen Vertigo, and I'm not comfortable enough with my understanding of Citizen Kane. Hopefully, once I get my projector situation figured out, I have a. Let's see. I can't pull it up easily right now, but I've got a Hitchcock collection that I want to get through. So on Blu-ray. So I'll have some fun with that, and I'll get back to y'all. Let's see.
I've never seen Vertigo either. I saw Citizen Kane maybe 2 years ago, and I thought that was one of the best things I've ever seen. Casablanca, which it talks about, that quote talks about at the end. I probably watched it too long ago, but that was my overall opinion too. Like the highlights are really good, and the rest of it didn't stick out to me at all.
I find it actually really useful to compare a lot of film stuff to popular music kind of metaphors like that, where it's like, oh, this has like a very catchy chorus. Like I like those kinds of comparisons. It especially like helps people understand. I think people consume popular music very well, actually, considering the general art atmosphere. The way people consume arts in general is not very directed or like intentional. But I think more people consume popular music that way. And so I think when you make those analogies, people understand a little bit better what you're trying to get at, which I think is interesting. So there's my interesting take right there. Okay, so this one says, oh, it's a news headline, which I thought was interesting. I want to get Ben's opinion on it. So it says, this comes from r/music news, and it says, Warner Music posts strongest quarter with 23% streaming gain and $1 billion of recorded music revenue, which I thought was interesting. I don't know anything about the New York, sorry. I don't know anything about the streaming market at all, music streaming market. So yeah, what are your thoughts, Ben?
I'd assume the vast majority of this is pop music, and I really don't know what artists are associated with Warner Music, so I'm not sure, from the pop music world, what exactly that means. But clearly, they're doing something right. They have a 23% gain in streaming, which seems pretty high to me. Not that I know like that much about like streaming at like that level of corporate production, $1 billion recorded music revenue. Presumably that's almost entirely from streaming, which it probably gets into like the actual model of how money is made via streaming, which probably means that, again, it's probably the top 5 to 10 pop artists who they have signed who have done really well, who are making about, I don't know, 98% of that 1 billion. I could maybe offer some more thoughts if I had a better idea of like what pop artists were signed with Warner, but I don't know enough about the pop music contractual scene.
Yeah, it's like a weird hierarchy, right? They're like labels under labels under labels under labels. I find it very strange, and it sounds very inefficient. I don't get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I was just looking at the Warner Music Group's like catalog of artists, and it lists the Lord of the Rings as one of them, which is very interesting, as in the soundtrack, which I didn't know was a thing, as in something that'd be under like Warner Music Group. Oh, because Warner movie things too, right?
Yeah, all of their film properties are going to be under Warner Music. Like, that's also Harry Potter, I think, is Warner.
A lot of them too, but definitely like a lot of like people who probably make no money as well. It's a lot of people I've never heard of before.
Streaming, it's the model of how revenue is shared that's a whole discussion on its own.
Okay, so this one is from Nathan. You want to read it?
Oh, let me explain the context first of the original post that this was commented. I believe this was on, I think, either r/music theory or r/music production, some music subreddit, and the original post was asking, where do I sort of start when it comes to music, or rather, I guess more specifically, where do I go? So what path do you take when you're trying to learn composition? And then this person commented, people keep saying there isn't a linear path. However, I disagree. Many concepts of music theory build upon earlier foundations. This video should give you what you're asking for is Guitar Center. Let me know if it helps. So a lot of the other comments were pretty much saying it's not really a predetermined path. You kind of just do what you want in a way. But this is the comment that stuck out because it didn't say that. So I was wondering what you thought about that.
Okay, yeah. So in terms of like creating music, well, I think today, with the advent of so many free resources and so much free music and easily accessible and fairly cheap music production software and hardware, the field has really been kind of democratized. And in earlier times, you did need sort of a really strict foundation in certain things in kind of sequential order in order to get to a certain level of mastery. And beyond that, even if you didn't necessarily need that, although I think you probably did, especially in the orchestral world, but even if you didn't need that, that was just how it was taught. And if you're going to learn, you were going to study with a teacher who is going to go through the standard progression of chords and then linear counterpoint, and then you get to work on orchestration. That was just how it was taught. Now, people generally, a lot of people are just writing music without having any education, and to varying results. I would say some people do really great things without having a background. Some people don't. So I disagree here. I don't think that that's true so much anymore. I do think there are certain things, like you don't want to spend your time studying orchestration, which is like assigning instruments to notes, if you don't have some sense of like what notes you're writing and why. Do you need like a formal education in like counterpoint and then formal analysis, but you had to have done harmony before that, and you had to have learned harmony in a special sequential fashion. I don't think that's true. I've had very little like formal. I've done a lot of formal music theory, not really much formal composition. I think at some point, everyone just has to figure out how to pull disparate things together. And I don't know that, having that set path before you is really going to make much of a difference unless you're trying to write like you are Mozart.
Okay, so let's just do two more. I think we have time for two more.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Okay. So I picked out two more. That's why I say two more. So this one's from Ben. Parasite. And then there's a link to an analysis, and they're talking about subtext, genre, subversion, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, it's... Parasite, I think, is immensely overrated. I've had this opinion. Did I watch it twice? No, I think I've only watched it once, but I doubt watching it again will change my opinion. Very well crafted movie, very, very intentional the way that it was made, very well shot. Every shot has very clear intention. I love that. It feels like the director and cinematographer really tried to nail down the visual language of the film, which I think is not very common in popular movies. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. From the story perspective and everything else, I don't know. It just didn't move me the way that it moved a lot of people. I found the story to be very on the nose in terms of the writing, not necessarily in terms of the cinematography, but in terms of the set design and the writing. I found a lot of the symbology to be extremely overt. And so when people say like, oh, very clever, I didn't notice this, I'm like, how do you not notice that? I don't know. Like, it's just like a very common way to speak that way in a film. But these are film people speaking, so I don't know if I'm maybe... And I'm not the type of person who really gets things on the first time every time or anything like that. I'm probably pretty average when it comes to that. So I don't think that's the problem. I just think everything is pretty on the nose. I had a talk with someone about the themes of the movie, and they were saying how isn't this interesting with that and this commentary here, and I'm like, not really, because I got that. I got all of that within like the first 10 minutes of the film. So like, I didn't really know why I should care about the commentary of the rest of the film. So I don't know. Maybe that's a bit of a minority opinion. So I guess you got a hot take out of this. But I would say it's a good film. I found it actually more boring than anything, not offensive. I just don't think it's an Oscar-worthy film necessarily. Subversion of genre, I don't know if I agree with that. It's not even that much of a genre piece. It's very straight drama and commentary. I don't know. I don't have much else to say. Have you guys seen it?
No, I haven't seen it myself.
I've seen part of it, and part I saw wasn't that intriguing personally, but I've just been surprised by the number of people that I know who think it's like the greatest cinematic masterpiece they've seen in a long time. Like, really? Was it really that great?
Yeah, I don't get it. On Letterboxd, it has like an insanely high score. It's like something like 4.6 out of 5 or something like that, which is like I think if you ranked Letterboxd, it's probably in the top 10. And I'm like, no, this is not a top 10 film. And I don't think rewatching it, because every time I look, I've read a lot of analyses because I always feel like I'm just missing something about the film. Like I'm just not getting something. I've watched analyses, I've read reviews and analyses. Everyone says what I already knew coming out of the movie. No one enlightens me about something I didn't get. So I don't get it. I think maybe it's because it has like a sort of class warfare sort of tone to it. But that's not new. Like, I don't know. It wasn't particularly interesting in the way it explored that topic either. It was just kind of, it was fine. It wasn't, not offensive, not particularly great to me either. So I don't know. So this one is from, who's this from? This is from me. So let's see. Oh, this one's from the YouTube comments. This one's for Ben. I actually saw this before we came up with the topic for this episode, and I was like, I wonder what Ben would think about this conversation. So yeah, so this is on a video for the Tenet soundtrack, and I was trying to remind myself of what the Tenet soundtrack sounded like from when I was or we were talking about Tenet last time. And I actually was surprised because it sounds much more Hans Zimmer-y than I remembered. And I think it's because the memorable parts are the non-Hans Zimmer-y parts. So this comment says, Hans Zimmer would be so proud after listening to this soundtrack. And I find comments like that kind of funny. I don't know why. I just think they're funny. And then someone says, Goransson is far superior to Hans Zimmer, and thus starts the debate in the comment section. And then this is the comment that was really the highlight. It says, whoa, fellas, lol. Goransson has a long way before his body of work rivals Hans. Is he off to an incredible start? Yes. Is he on track to become one of the best ever to do it? Most likely. But he still bows down to Hans and many, many other composers. Can't even begin to name all of the composers that have incredible bodies of work far, far, far more comprehensive in scope to Goransson's. And then the comment is about quality over quantity. And then this person says Hans Zimmer has done more, but the quality is not always there. In fact, it's repetitive. So that is the debate. What do you think, Ben?
Okay. Well, I would say there are a lot of composers who have much greater breadth to their work than Goransson at this point in his career. I haven't found anything that he's done to be that fantastic. Like it's fine. Like even like The Mandalorian is like it does things really well for the show. It has a nice main theme, but is it great music? No, not really. I find it a little annoying on the the episode of the Making of the Mandalorian documentary where it focuses on the music, and he's like, I spent like 3 months thinking about what wacky combination of instruments can I come up with to create this wacky sound for the opening. I'm like, no, you didn't. You literally listened to the good, the bad, and the ugly, and you say, great, I'm just going to change it, like put it down an octave and slow it down twice as much. That's it. Okay? If you want to pass off Morricone's genius as your own and claim that you spent months searching after this sound and expect us to believe that, no. Again, it's effective music all around, and yes, he's trying to go for that Morricone sound, that Western sound, because that's what The Mandalorian is trying to be. Does he compete with Zimmer yet? No. Zimmer has done so much, and so much of it is high quality, even if I don't love all of it. Does he compete with someone like John Williams? Absolutely not. Even people like Giacchino or John Powell? No. I think they all have better technique than he does overall in terms of handling the orchestra. He does interesting things. Do they do things that like are gonna linger with me? And have they done it for a lot longer and a lot more films? Absolutely. Will he get there? I agree. He'll. Well, I don't know if anything he'll do will linger with me in the way that those composers do. Will he get to their like the breadth of their work and number? Yeah, he'll get there. He'll probably end up being one of the the next headlining the next generation of big composers.
I don't know anything about Goransson. I don't think I've heard anything other than the Tenet score by him because I haven't seen The Mandalorian.
Black Panther.
Oh yeah, Black Panther, yeah. But the thing is, Black Panther, I think in both of those scenarios, he's kind of being a chameleon. So it's like not very helpful to understand what he can bring in particular, because he did bring in both of those movies, he brought a punch to it that stood out. Particularly the villain's theme in Panther was interesting, definitely. Very, very Marvel soundtracks are just a snooze fest. It's just boring as heck.
Absolutely. My goodness. Sorry. There's a formula too. You know exactly how many trombones you have to use and how many trumpets you have to use, and you get the theme exactly where you expect it, and it's always the same thing, and the rest of the music is forgettable.
It's Marvel is all the same garbage. I'm sorry to all the Marvel fans out there, but you know, he brought the spice in Black Panther such that I actually noticed that there was music playing in certain scenes. So
he brought the African flair, actually, which makes sense.
Yeah, so that was good of him. And in Tenet, he brought a very like cyberpunky feel to. I think in particular it's noticeable in the beginning of the film and maybe certain action scenes in the middle where he just decides to add this pulsing driving, and in a theater that gets you like it's not the same. I was listening to my headphones and I was like, this is not what I remember, and then I realized it's because in a theater that is a much different experience. It very much so. He's drawing on frequencies that are obviously vibrating and like, you know, it's very driving, but everywhere it's not doing that special spice. It's kind of just generic Hans Zimmer imitation, kind of repetitive, boring music. So yeah, that would be my opinion. Is that it for our Reddit reactions, our Reddit hot takes?
That was a lot for each of us.
Yeah, it was fun. I thought that was really fun. If you do want to hang out where we plan the podcast, you gotta jump on our Discord. On the screen, if you're watching the video, there is a link, ariella.co/mixedmedia, if you're listening on audio. If you search Mixed Media Podcast, I think you can find us now, which is kind of cool. And if you search Mixed Media Podcast on YouTube, Twitch, all the information is there. ariella.co/mixedmedia. There you can join our Discord, which is a place where you can tell us how angry you are at our hot takes, and we are guaranteed to read it. Unlike maybe if you hop onto Reddit to rant about us, that's not fun. You gotta hop onto our Discord, and so we can have a big conversation. And we're all nice people. The only place you can find the raw stream will be mixedmedia.locals.com. Now, I said earlier that this whiteboard on the screen right here is available to people who join Mixed Media. That is no longer true because you missed it. You missed your opportunity. What can be true, though, is you can comment if you're on YouTube that you want the whiteboard privileges. You want whiteboard. Just type in whiteboard, whatever you want. And you have to make an account on locals.com. That's mixedmedia.locals.com. Send us a screenshot of your comment on YouTube, and then, for free, you will get whiteboard privileges up to a certain amount. I'm going to say up to, let's say, the first 3 for now, because we're probably not going to get more people than that anyway. So we'll say the first 3 people for free will get whiteboard privileges for the next time we go live. And with that, I think that's pretty much it for housekeeping. Anything else to say?
I don't think so.
Cool. So see you guys next week, Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern for Mixed Media Live. See ya.
Thanks for listening.